If your opponent goes with a Bandit, Rogue Ghost, and Magic Archer, then your opponent is most likely playing some sort of bridge spam deck. Same thing goes for if your opponent places a Royal Hogs push with some Zappies behind it, they are definitely using some sort of Fireball bait. And now I present to you both of these decks. Which one is the better deck? This deck right above me, deck number 1, is going to be the better deck here because it has way more synergy and overall better cards in the current meta. In today's video, we're going to take a look at all of these tips and ways that you can make massive improvements in your Clash Royale gameplay. Throughout the entire video, we're going to start with beginner tips and advance as time goes on throughout the video to more pro tips and practices. You're going to want to stick around until the end because by mastering some of these tips, you're going to easily be able to win way more games in Clash Royale. Even a player like me that just plays for fun and for videos for you guys has recently been playing against a lot more higher competitive players, so much so that even matches like this come down to the wire and I'm really competitive against some of the best players in the world. This is the player I recently lost to, but it was an excellent game, and in order to put up a fight against people like this, you need to have all of the best practices and tips learned in today's video. So without further ado, we're getting into the tips to get better at Clash Royale. For today's video, we have 3 different sections and numerous tips to help you guys get better. Section number 1 is going to be the preparation. This is stuff that has to do with before you go into battle. You can do right now in the sweet, relaxed comfort of your home. Step number 2 will be the plan and overall knowledge in the game once you are actually going into a battle. And step number 3, towards the end of the video, is going to be the most advanced tips for all of the best players out there. This will have to do with when you're actually in battle, going through insane cycles, and of course, crushing opponents. Tip number 1. Hopping into the first tip, you gotta understand, does your deck have synergy? If you go into battle with a faulty or non-meta deck, you are planning to fail. An example of this is a deck right here. This deck has no synergy. You're left with a couple mini tanks, but other than that, you're not gonna be able to tag up the towers. Even though some of the cards in this deck are strong, by themselves, you're not going to get much working. Whereas in contrast, a deck like this has a lot of bait. The Prince does heavy DPS. He can absolutely crush units. The Rascals are another super meta card. And if we quickly go back, the Elixir Golem is not very good in this current meta. On top of everything else, this deck has insane bait, meaning the logs are going to come down on your Goblin Gang, Dark Goblin, and Princess, which will allow your Goblin to be able to do an insane amount of damage. Quickly, if you're not entirely sure what the word meta means, it basically means the cards that are best in the current season in place. For example, Valkyrie is better in this meta than the Knight, whereas in past metas, the Valkyrie was outshined by the Knight. 2 cards that are fairly similar, but because of the Valkyrie splash damage and the Royal Hogs being so incredibly strong, Valkyrie has surged in this current meta. For this example, we're going to use my favorite deck in the game, the Log Bait Guards Inferno Tower, and this takes us to step number 2, where you need to understand your deck's strengths and weaknesses. This has to do with your overall matchup, but hey, there's a lot to this. When you get into a matchup, guys, you can have a very good time, or you can have a really rough matchup. What I mean by this is you can have cards in your deck that are very strong, but if the opponent has counters, they're going to oftentimes win the game just from that. And examples right here in battle, the Princess, the Valkyrie, 2 solid counters here, but because we do not have the Inferno Tower and we have the Tesla instead, we simply do not have enough in order to defend this push. So the balloon ends up destroying us and we take the loss. By understanding how your deck thrives and of course struggles with, then you can then prepare for in battle and obviously counter those decks you know you win against. This is the type of thing that will come through practice and overall just absolutely crushing in ladder. As you play, you'll understand your deck's counters, and even before you play a deck, sometimes the counters are obvious. An example of this is this deck right here. Hog Riders are very difficult with this deck, fast cycle hog decks, because think about it, you got no buildings to slow that Hog Rider down. You're gonna need to log it down and place your Goblin Gang, but if they predict that Goblin Gang, things are gonna be rough. A relevant example that I can think of right now to tell you guys exactly what Log Bait does well against is minor Magic Archer wall breakers. When facing that deck, it can be difficult, but as long as you defend and wait until double elixir, then you can start rocket cycling, and there's legitimately nothing they can do in terms of having a big spell, so your rocket cycle will just take them down. So when I face that deck, that is always a solid win for me because I know exactly how to play it based on just my deck straight up countering theirs. Tip number 3 is going to be use relevant cards. I get a lot of people joining the Discord server, sending their deck, and then I see their deck has a wizard and a witch in it, and I'm thinking, bro, you gotta be using relevant cards. Now, I don't mean relevant as in they're relevant to you. I mean relevant as in they are very powerful in this current meta, meaning they are some of the best cards in the game. A perfect example of this is Cannon Cart. If you have a high level Cannon Cart, you should definitely consider using it, especially if you don't have many other high level cards. The Cannon Cart is very tanky, does a lot of damage, and overall puts in a bunch of pressure on your opponent, and there are many cards like this, and if you want to see more tips on that, check out the video in the corner. That wraps up section number 1, a pretty in-depth section, but still still not too difficult. That is the basic stuff of today's video. Make sure to stay until the end of the video because that is where we're getting into the pro level practices that they use to make a lot of potential losses guaranteed wins. Now remember at the beginning of the video where I asked you guys if you see these certain cards, what decks are you facing? Well, here it is. When you're in a battle, guys, you gotta understand exactly which deck you're going against. This can be difficult, especially mid-ladder when your opponent's decks are wide range of cards and very unpredictable, but still this idea holds. You need to learn your opponent's deck while playing in the battle. We are queuing up for a battle right now, and tip number 4 is play defense. This can obviously not be true for all decks, but for most decks, it's a good idea to play slow at the get-go here. And there we go. We figure out his deck. We see what cards he has. He just logged our guards, so we sound out our barrel, and now we're able to get some good damage. By being patient, oftentimes you can have a lot of success, and by playing slow, they'll waste cards that then you can push them and punish them with. This is a close game, but it's coming down to the wire, and you're here for the final moments. Whether we win or not, I don't really know if that's going to matter, because this is going to be a close one. We're going to log. We're going to hopefully catch this Goblin Barrel beautifully here. We'll take it down. That was absolutely epic. We're going to win this thing right here, dude. We're going in with the Rocket Goblin Barrel combo. He's coming at us with the Miner, so we're going to Electro Spirit. We land the Rocket. We get the Goblins on tower, and just like that, by playing smart, we come out on top on a match that very well could have been a loss. We learned our opponent's deck, we played smart, and even though we got in a little bit of a deficit at the beginning, simply from not understanding his deck early on, we were able to then shift our plays down, really tone it in order to get that win. Once that early game strategy is all taken care of, and you get really good at predicting your opponent's decks and winning games based off of it, then we make our way into the third section and the most advanced tips for today's video. The most basic of the 3 that we're going to be talking about is to focus your damage on one tower. This goes without saying, but you want to split up your damage in almost no situations. Targeting one tower will of course make it go weaker and weaker over time, and if we were to split up our damage in this match here, we would have potentially gotten overrun because every little bit of damage counted since we were really trying to get towards our end goal so we could rocket the tower. However, as with everything, there's generally exceptions. If they're defending you very well, it is a good idea to switch lanes up sometimes and really push the opposite lane. They might not expect it. And the second and most important tip of the day is to manage elixir. By not completing this last tip when in battle, you are basically completely disregarding all of the previous tips. This final tip is integral to how your entire battle will go and overall game progress, dude. You will lose so many more games if your management on elixir is not up to par. This goes in hand with saving elixir until you know what your opponent has. If we focus on this gameplay right now, you'll see we're saving elixir, but we are not leaking elixir. We don't want to wait for our opponent so long so that they get elixir while placing cards. We want to constantly recycling, constantly playing cards, and overall cycling much smarter than they are. Right here, you'll see we rarely hit 10 elixir. We're constantly making moves, and even though we're tripping them up and we're playing smart, he's not getting a break, but at the same time, we're playing slow enough to where we can easily counter everything that he throws at us. By doing this, you get a great balance of aggression and defense because you do not want to obviously let your entire tower get swept over, but it also, you don't want to waste all of your elixir on attack because although you could take their tower, it very well might cost you your own tower, which at what cost is that? That makes the game a much more of a gamble on whether you'll win or lose. We could go through the millions of interactions in Clash Royale and show you guys exactly what the best placements are for every card, but that is just not possible. But if you do want to know anything else, comment your video ideas down below, and I truly do appreciate you for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and have a fantastic day, everybody. Master Diddy-san, out.